Welcome to Reflections presented by the Outreach Committee of Paducah Cooperative Ministry. Today we're going to be continuing our series of programs that introduce you to some of the newer clergy in the Paducah area. Today we're excited to have with us Pastor Aaron Stamper from St. Matthew Lutheran Church. Welcome, Aaron. We've been trying to get this date and time nailed down for some time. We're really glad you're here. This is not a first meeting for Aaron or me. We've been involved in some things over a while, and we're talking about new clergy in the area. Actually, it's new in the time that it takes us to get hooked up and get the program scheduled. Actually, I believe in an earlier conversation, you've been here a little over a year, right?
That's right. I started at St. Matthew on February 1st.
And February 1st of 10. And if I'm not mistaken, something else, your arrival in Paducah was somewhat memorable, was it not?
It was. I was involved in a car accident just a few days after we arrived here, which was kind of the cherry on top of the proverbial sundae. 5 days before we were scheduled to leave, my wife and son and I were in Tempe, Arizona at the time, before we moved to Paducah. And 5 days before we left, we found out that the offer we had that had been accepted on a house, to buy a house in Paducah, that the sellers were backing out. So we were a little on heightened stress at that point. So we were living in a hotel for the first few days, and there was a big snowstorm, and we were involved in a car accident trying to get to a coffee shop one morning to look over some house options on the newspaper. So we tried not, I don't put too much stock in omens or black cats or ladders or anything like that, so it didn't derail me too much, but it was not the way we wanted to ease into things here.
To say your arrival was interesting would be an understatement, I guess. Want to go back. Let's go back. You mentioned Tempe, and we'll catch up with that in a minute. Mm-hmm. But tell us a little bit about, you've obviously moved here, so you didn't grow up here. Where did you grow up, interests and so forth, kind of your path up to Tempe through college and so forth?
How much time we got?
30 minutes.
Well, long story short, I grew up in Northwest Ohio. I lived in Bowling Green, Ohio, and then in a small town called Archbold, about 3,000 folks there, and lived there until I graduated high school. I'll kind of tell my stories side by side here, my moves and my call. I was one of those kids who went to church because my parents made me, but for some reason everybody told me that I was going to be a pastor one day. And I don't know what propelled them to say that, other than the fact that I was showing up on a regular basis and somewhat participating. So time came to go to college. I went to Valparaiso University in Northwest Indiana. And there I had thought, well, I might as well look into ministry options. They had a pre-seminary program there. Quickly discovered that was not what I wanted to do. It took me until the end of the first semester of my senior year to finally decide on a major. I changed a few times, but by the time I left college, I decided I wanted to be a graphic designer. It was very important to me to be in some kind of advertising. I wanted to wear a nice suit, have a nice car, be in a high rise in a big city, doing bigwig type stuff. So that's where I wanted to go. But as luck would have it, that was a pretty rough time to jump into the graphic design field. And so I was doing a bunch of freelance things, worked for the admissions office at Valparaiso, designing all those brochures that flood the mailboxes of seniors, juniors and seniors in high school, which I still apologize for my role in that. But again, long story short, it just wasn't happening, and I didn't really have any options. And at the time, my now wife, Lindsay, we were dating, we were very serious. I wanted to propose to her, but I didn't have steady income or anything. So we moved back to Ohio to be closer to her, and I went back to summer camp. I had worked at a Lutheran summer camp north of Columbus, Ohio, every summer during college, and they always welcomed me back. So I knew that I could go there and work. And while I was there, I really felt a sense of peace and a sense that what I was doing was right, that I was supposed to be there, that I was on the right path, and I had not felt that before with my other pursuits. So I finally bit the bullet and said, maybe this is something I should look into. And I prayed, talked with family, talked with my wife, and we decided, well, it might be what you're called to be. So I enrolled at an interdenominational seminary in Pasadena, California, called Fuller Theological Seminary. And for the next few years, I studied there, ended up getting my Master of Divinity from Fuller. I also, since it's an interdenominational seminary, but I am serving in the Lutheran Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, they wanted me to attend a Lutheran seminary, one of 8 that they have in the U.S. And so they sent me up to the Great White North of Minnesota. So my wife and I, we spent a year in St. Paul, Minnesota, at Luther Seminary, and then from there, so just to keep track here, we've moved from from Indiana to Ohio to California to Minnesota, and my the final aspect of my degree was an internship, a 1-year internship, and I was placed in a very large Lutheran church in Tempe, Arizona. So we moved from Minnesota to Tempe. That was our 4th move in 4 years, and we were there for a year and a half. There my son Nolan was born, and we moved to Paducah and bought a house as soon as we could and said, we're staying. Just time to put down some roots, and we've been pleased ever since.
You've traveled more you're considerably younger than I, and you've traveled more in your lifetime than I have. That's a rather incredible track record you had. Different denominations work differently on how pastors move and so forth. Mm-hmm. How does the Lutheran Church work? And the point I'm getting to is, how did you become aware of the opening at St. Sure. Matthew? And I know that you felt called here, obviously, that's why you're here, right. But tell us about your finding Paducah, learning about Paducah.
Oh, that's a good question. Typically, for Lutheran clergy who have a number of years of experience, the decision to move, where to move, that's pretty much up to them. There's no body telling clergy where to go. Now, in my case, this is my first call. It's my first paid clergy position outside of seminary. So the church body does have a little bit more control over that situation. What happened was the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, has divided the whole U.S. into 6 regions. And I was allowed to put in my preferences for regions. And so I chose my top 3, and I got my region, which happened to be Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Kentucky. So I knew, I think that was in October. By October, I knew that was where I was going to be, somewhere in the Midwest area. From there, the geographical areas are broken down into synods. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that I believe there are about 9 synods within that region, one synod being Indiana, Kentucky. So I put down my preference for my top 3 synods. Indiana, Kentucky was not on my top 3. Safe to say, I mostly for the purpose that we just want to be close to family.
Right.
And my wife's family, my family, they're all in Ohio, so that's where we put in for. But they like to move us around a little bit and not let us get into a comfort zone. And since I had grown up in Ohio, I think that kind of factored in their decision. Let's put him somewhere else. So I was assigned to the Indiana, Kentucky Synod. And from there, I was given 3 current vacant positions, 2 in Indiana, 1 in Kentucky. And I didn't even look at the one in Kentucky because I had, never heard of Paducah. I didn't know where it was, but I assumed it was pretty far away from Ohio, far away from family. And two, having lived in Indiana at Valparaiso, I was more familiar with that area. But each congregation has a profile, and it goes beyond just numbers, but it gives a statement of who they are, an explanation of where they want to go, who they see themselves as people of God. And so I read through the three, and I tried not to look at the name on top, keep them all even. And I looked at the one at Paducah and said, there's something about that congregation that seems very powerfully on point. Like, it just seems like they're very healthy, that they're moving in a right direction, and they had indicated that their previous pastors have had very long tenures there, which is a good thing to know, because some congregations just are inherently kind of poisonous, for lack of a better term. If there's a track record of a pastor being there a year, 2 years, there's something wrong about that. And so I was comforted with seeing that they had long tenures. And from there, I'd said, all right, I just need to have an open mind about this. Paducah, wherever it is, let's go check it out. Let's see it. Let's meet some people. So I came here. It was the weekend of the Michigan-Ohio State game, which is a holiday for me, being an Ohio State fan. And
we may have problems this weekend.
This week could pose some problems here on Friday night as they play Kentucky. But as soon as I met folks here and went through the interview process, saw the town, I thought, this is absolutely where I'm supposed to be.
I find that interesting because I spend some time every week in the lower town area, so forth and so on, and friends of mine and I are constantly saying that we think Paducah is a really good town. It's a really great town. So it's good to see that you came in and felt the same way. I would almost at this point like to go down that road, but I need to go down another road because, as I told you, our time will fly by. I was introduced physically and spiritually to St. Matthew Lutheran at the PCM Thanksgiving service. You graciously hosted it. We had a great Thanksgiving service over there. Tell me and the people a little bit about St. Matthew, what you have learned about it, what you enjoy about it, programs, and also kind of your vision. I think it's great that we have young people in the clergy now ministering. Just talk a little bit about St. Matthew and where you hope to go and see and so forth.
Oh, wow. Well, St. Matthew is very aware, very proud of our Lutheran heritage. And
as I ask you to start, let me
Sure.
interrupt. People are saying, okay, I think I know. St. Matthew is the church at approximately 28th and Broadway.
That's right.
Westminster Presbyterian, if you're going down Broadway, Westminster Presbyterian is on the left, and then it's St. Matthew Lutheran on the right there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but try to get people focused on which church we're talking about.
Got that big stained glass window in the corner there.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Being a Lutheran church, we have the option to we could do whatever we wanted worship-wise. We could be a contemporary praise worship. We could be a high liturgy worship. It's completely up to us. And I get the sense that what the people of St. Matthew have decided is that we really want to uphold our Lutheran identity. And the way we do that, the healthy way that we can do that, is through our worship. So we use the same worship format that any number of, or the majority of ELCA Lutheran churches would use. It's printed in a hymnal. It is based on the ancient high liturgy with certain Kyrie, a creed, the sermon, a number of biblical readings, hymns. So for us, that works. That is edifying. It gives us a connection both to God and to our ancestors who also worshiped in that way. the Lutherans pride themselves on a number of things, one being the music tradition. We like to claim Bach as a Lutheran. Luther himself wrote a number of beautiful hymns, so we have all those at our disposal. And so worship is a epitome of who we are and what we do together. That being said, it's very easy to just use that as an idol, to say the most important thing about being Lutheran is how we do things on Sunday morning, which I would gently rebuke. I feel the most important thing that we as Lutherans can do is be people of faith outside, be people of faith when you go home from church, when you go to work, when you go to the gym. How are you embodying what you believe? And not necessarily even what you believe, but who God has called you to be. And that is a much more difficult question. I'm finding that the biggest challenge is to help people understand how God is at work in their daily lives. I think people either assume that God is at work and don't think about it, or they don't, and they assume God is primarily just there on Sunday mornings, and that's when we worship, but then when we go home, it's our time. So kind of moving people towards the center, because I think there's beauty and life in our daily life and responsibilities as employees, as parents, as taxpayers, that should be informed by our faith. And I pray every day that it would be. In terms of programs, we're a fairly small church, and we know what we can offer and what we can't. And one of the things that's very important to our church is a big fancy word called ecumenicalism, which is just a fancy word for teamwork. We strongly feel like we are in this together with all other Christians, no matter what your race or your religious belief or your creedal belief. We're all in this as God's people. So how can we work together? We're developing a number of very positive relationships with other churches in the area, most notably Grace Episcopal Church. The ELCA and the Episcopal Church have been partners officially for about 10 years now. And so it's taken us about 10 years, but we're finally starting to flesh out what exactly that means and what teamwork can look like between congregations, which I'm very happy to be a part of that. I see one of my calls as helping people to expand. I think we slowly, when left to our own devices, we get a little too narrow and rigid. We hang out with people who are just like us, who look like us, who think like us, who believe the same things we do. And the smaller your world gets, the less you have to offer other people. So, which is, that's kind of my vision, kind of expanding people. How we're going to get there, I don't know. I'm relying on prayer an awful lot and Holy Scripture, but I think we're on the right track.
That's interesting. You mentioned the ecumenical portion of it. You've been here a little over a year, but it hasn't taken you long to become involved. Recently, you were elected to the board of Paducah Cooperative Ministry. The board being made up of pastors, representatives from the member congregations and so forth. Your pastor neighbor across the street, Pamela Gordon, who was featured on this show recently, came on at the same time. Tell me a little bit about how you learned of PCM and how Paducah Cooperative Ministry, and it sounds like it's a real good fit for you and your philosophy and so forth. And is it similar to anything you've seen in Tempe or any of your other?
Well, I found out about PCM on that congregational profile that I mentioned.
Really?
That was important enough to the congregation to mention that, to make me aware of that, which I took to be a good sign. And so when I got here, it wasn't very long before I was introduced to Heidi and the rest of the PCM staff, and people took it upon themselves to help me understand what resources are available through PCM. So to answer some of your other questions here, I have not seen anything like PCM before.
Really?
The level of cooperation amongst congregations, amongst faiths, it's incredible. And it speaks to my point. If we can imagine what would be available to people who are in need in Paducah if we were all going at this alone. If we decided we needed a food pantry and someone else decided they could use a food pantry, and I think that would kind of breed this kind of unhealthy competition, but also our food pantry probably wouldn't have much in it. We wouldn't have the reach. And PCM, by working together, you have a food pantry, very well stocked, but that's only one small part of what we're able to accomplish together. So I was absolutely thrilled to be asked to serve on the board, and I look forward to figuring out ways that we can continue to help. Not that I think PCM needs to take on any more responsibilities. I think maybe at this point we've stretched as far as we can. We just need to make sure that we're giving all our support and attention to those ministries. But it's an absolute joy and pleasure to work with them and to be a voice for that. One other thing I would like to mention is raising money for PCM was also something that was very important to our congregation. And last year, one of our members decided that she had a lot of extra produce that she had grown in her garden and wondered, well, what can I do with this? I'm just giving it away to people and I don't even know if they need it. And someone else said, well, yeah, I have the same problem. I think at this point it was getting to be the hot, dry part of summer, and we all had zucchini, just throwing it at people on the street, trying to get rid of it. So what we decided to do was to hold a kind of a impromptu farmer's market, a garden market, and all of the excess that we had, we sold. So we accepted donations from people's gardens, and we also sold it as a free will offering. So someone could come and give us $50 for an ear of corn, or someone could come and take a watermelon and not pay us anything. It's completely up to them. And that ended up being a very good fundraiser, and we're excited to be doing that again this year.
And I was aware of that program, and I don't know if I saw it in the newspaper or I don't know how I became aware of it, but I think you did it on Sunday mornings?
Yeah, we moved around a little bit, but ended up on Sunday mornings.
Well, and I was always angry. The next time I would see it, I would realize that I'd forgotten about it the previous time. But that is an excellent idea, and I think I will say I've just finished my second year of a 3-year term on the board of PCM, and I think one thing that you will learn right off the bat is how much you learn, how much there is to PCM. I've learned so much about the programs and so forth. And I will admit something that you mentioned, it's easy to generate new ideas and say, hey, why don't we do this, when sometimes I think we need to make sure we're doing a really good job of what we've got going on. But I'm excited about your joining the board for that reason, because you will bring different insights, you will bring different viewpoints, and that's very interesting to me. Your comment that you had not seen anything like Paducah Cooperative Ministry, and at the annual meeting recently, I believe they mentioned that we're finishing 37th and starting 38th year, and it was just a vision that the local people had almost 40 years ago. And one of the results of it, one of the effects of it that you don't realize is the churches are constantly requests are constantly made by people from the street. There could be a family passing through town who have run out of money, who don't have gas money and so forth. And where do they stop? Do they go to the police department? Maybe. Do they go to the county courthouse? Maybe. More than likely, you're right on Broadway, Broadway and 28th Street. They see a church, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to come calling and say, can you help us?
Yeah.
And that is one of the great things about PCM is you can say, I've got an answer for you.
Yeah.
I don't know what resources they have today, don't know where their emergency funds are today, but I've got a place I can send you.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of those questions that I wondered about when I was getting ready to take the call. That there's a number of logistics you wonder, well, how am I going to handle that situation? And one would be when people are constantly knocking on the door asking for financial assistance, food, what resources do we have and what can I give them? Because I want to give, that's part of what I'm called to do. But to be able to say, yes, I can help you.
Yes.
It might not be exactly what you're hoping to hear, but there is a place that will help you. I guarantee it.
Right.
And that's a huge asset.
And like you said, if you're trying to do a food pantry and this other group is trying to do a food pantry, they're so limited in so many ways. Yeah. You're pretty much assured that you're busy, you're out, you're in the hospital or something. The hospital, your church staff, whoever's there, can say, I've got a phone number, let me call, let me see. We're wrapping up. I told you that the 30 minutes would fly by. It has for me. Any final just 30-second observations about your first year in Paducah? I'll let you have the last word.
Well, it has surpassed my expectations. And I don't mean to say that I had low expectations, but I do find Paducah a wonderful town, and I feel very privileged and blessed to be a part of everything here.
Well, I can say without reservation, since I first met you, I've been very impressed. Your energy, your focus, your willingness to work and everything, and I think it's a blessing that you and Paducah found each other, and you weathered the storm, so to speak. When you arrived, and so maybe those little challenges just make your being here a little easier.
I would say so.
We've been talking with Pastor Aaron Stamper from St. Matthew Lutheran Church, 28th and Broadway in Paducah. This program is called Reflections. I'm Jim Toy. Thank you for joining us.